Welcome back to On Texas Football. Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. I'm Jeff Howe, joined as always on Wednesday nights by lifetime Longhorn Marcus Myers, taking your questions, comments, concerns. We'll have a little Festivus, have an airing of grievances if that's what you want to do. Whatever you got, line it up in the chat. Super chats, as always, jump to the front of the line, and thanks everybody for participating. Big thanks to Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise, our lead sponsor for tonight's live stream, and we will be shouting out our fine sponsors here at On Texas Football throughout the show. Talking a lot of spring practice. We got the women's basketball team in the Final Four this weekend. I know Marcus, as a unabashed cheerleader for the women's basketball team, season ticket holder, Marcus is excited about the women taking on UCLA. Are you trying, Marcus, not to think about a potential showdown with UConn on Sunday? Trying to keep the focus on UCLA.
Yeah, focus on UCLA, but we know what's out ahead. So
exactly. So we can talk women's basketball, men's basketball. We didn't mention this last night, but I just figured I'd shout out Jordan Pope. I believe yesterday had surgery on his foot, the broken foot he played through in the Sweet 16 game against Purdue. Marcus, that's one of those efforts that I think for Longhorn fans, that puts you in the folk hero category that a very few select guys go into, knowing he did what he did in the Sweet 16 to try to get Texas to an Elite Eight on a broken foot.
Absolutely, man. He left it all out there. You heard him in the interviews afterwards. It meant a lot to him, and great to see that, the surgery was successful. He's back on his road to recovery. But, man, the young man's performance those last two games, you could even tell the game prior, that he was limping around out there. And the fact that he just wouldn't come out and kept hitting big shots, will forever be a lifetime Longhorn, man. So.
Absolutely. So shout out to Jordan Pope. Also, Marcus, I don't know if I've heard of some stuff like this happening, but I don't know that I've ever heard it for an athlete happening. So Adrian Rodriguez had a hand procedure done yesterday on his hand. So he had hand surgery in the offseason. It was performed by Dr. Shin, the same surgeon who did A-Rod's initial surgery. He was also the guy that did John Mateer's thumb surgery. Everybody go easy on CJ in the chat, please, with the John Mateer references. But so he's been experiencing some inflammation and pain and discomfort. I mean, anyone who's watched a baseball game, when he swings and misses, I mean, it looks painful. And what the problem was, Schloss finally laid this out last night after the win over Texas State. Apparently the staple that was in his hand is made of nickel and cobalt. And Marcus, he was allergic to it. I've heard of that happening with some people. I don't know if I've ever heard that from an athlete's surgery, though, this far after the fact that was what was identified as the problem.
Yeah, I've not come across that either. And I mean, I think it's great that at least they figured it out, right? I mean, you certainly could have been, trudging along even longer and just thinking it was one of those deals that he would get over. So certainly wish him a speedy recovery. I know we'll certainly need him down the stretch. And I think they got more than enough to, kind of fill in for him while he's on the mend. But yeah, that's one of those stories, to your point, Jeff, I hadn't come across before, and hopefully we don't have to again, at least for anyone in the Longhorn uniform.
Yeah. Timo Becerra sliding over short last night. Casey Bourba moving back to third. Josh Livingston in first. Law says he thinks that's how they'll start games in the interim until A-Rod gets back. Schloss tried to temper it. He didn't completely rule out A-Rod being ready for the Texas A&M series next weekend, but that sounds like that would probably be pushing it. So we'll see whenever he's able to get back. Marcus, real quick before we get into the nitty gritty, Scott has a really good question. I think he says, April Fool's question: what trick plays do you want to see this year? I go back to, Marcus, the Tom Herman era with the backwards pass to Sam Cosmi, because I'm all about a fat guy touchdown. So you want to mix that
Big
in?
Man touchdown.
I'm good with that. But any kind of trick play, Marcus, that gets you fired up?
I'm a bigger fan of, like, and I don't know if you truly call it a trick play, but it was more kind of like that sleight of hand quadruple reverse thing that Quinn did, where it seemed like people were going every which direction. And, I think the very next week or that same Sunday, Andy Reid used it in a game in the NFL. So I'm more along the lines of something like that. I don't really like to dig too deep in the trick play bag because, usually that means that, you're trying to generate something. I'd rather just kind of be more dominant. But, kind of misdirection, if you will, is maybe more my preferred trick play bag.
I like the old starburst kickoff return. I know not a lot of people do that anymore, but
Wow, yeah, I hadn't seen that in a minute.
yeah, I do like those. You know what I've noticed too, Marcus, and this is wild. So I think everybody in high school, if you're of a certain age, for PAT field goal, you lined up in the swinging gate.
Swinging gate.
No,
I never
nobody
did it.
And no, you just showed it, and then you went to line up for PAT field goal. I see more high school teams now lining up in the swinging gate and actually running a play out of it. I'm like, it just blows my mind. I'm like, I didn't know people actually like. That's one of those ideas, man. Maybe it's just crazy enough to work, and some coach just decided, you know what, maybe we'll actually run something out of this. So it's interesting because one of my high school teammates is actually a special teams coordinator. And I gave him a bunch of guff because I'm like, man, nobody ever run anything out. We never ran anything out of the swinging game. Like, so you had to bring it out and actually run something. So I did think that was cool. So I don't know if Jeff Banks will bring out the swinging gate, Marcus. Not really something you see at this level of football, but I do appreciate it whenever I see it. It's become pretty prominent at the high school level. So I do appreciate it when I see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Silver Spur Sicko, Cam Coleman to Arch for a 40-yard bomb. I don't, Marcus, I'm trying to think of what I was watching the other day. It was an old highlight. Maybe it was from, I forget, it might have been from the 05 season. But I remember watching Quan on like a reverse pass. And Quan, for what it's worth, Quan Cosby did play quarterback in high school. But I'm watching him throw the ball. I'm like, man, like, you don't see that many guys look that smooth. Many wide receivers look that smooth on whether it's the reverse pass or you throw like the little bubble and he raises up and throws it. Texas Matthew Golden had one in 24 to Gunnar Helm, but I was like, man, Quan just looks so smooth on his pass. Like it was about as legit as a wide receiver pass can be.
Yeah, I mean, and Quan had that, extra level of maturity, right? He was coming from playing a little minor league baseball, so he was a little older than most of the guys. So it was probably, a moment that didn't feel too big to him. I think a lot of times what you see when you see those receivers throwing those passes, maybe they played in high school, but like, that kind of feels like your moment, right? And so you can kind of be amped up and adrenaline going, and you tend to see more ducks than you do see, a nice tight spiral.
No doubt. All right, we'll keep taking your questions, but Marcus, let's go ahead and talk some Texas football. And I want to start with this. I'll get your thoughts on this first question. It says, is Paris Patterson good? Paris Patterson Jr., the offensive lineman from SMU, who just signed with Texas yesterday. They're taking him out of the transfer portal. CJ and I talked about it, Marcus, last night on the live stream. We talked about it on the channel, but just your thoughts on Texas going into the portal to get an offensive line body at this point. To me, my initial thought was, man, Caden Scherer's injury is maybe more severe than we thought. So, hey, why not just, if you can bring in a guy who didn't start last year but played 11 games at SMU, former four-star recruit, why not just take a flyer on somebody?
Yeah, it's possible. Jeff, I mean, I can go back to when we were doing the transfer portal shows where I kind of, put my stake in the ground to say, hey, I figured, we'd probably have some guys show up after the official portal window that you're not expecting necessarily to be a starter, but more depth pieces. One, because you have the ability to go all the way up to 105 if you really wanted to. Two, being that, they just had to have entered the portal, right? Obviously all those guys entered the portal. Not everybody found a home. And then lastly, like you want these depth pieces, right? So it could be exactly what you said in the, case of Scherer. And it could also just be, hey, we need to make sure that we have enough bodies to do everything that we want to do. Give guys, the ability to work reps, fully with, not having to, be truly sucking wind left and right.
Yeah.
And then, it's one of those deals where it's like, look, man, when all the portal traffic was on the way out the door, everybody wanted offensive linemen. And now they've remade that room, and you've, heard some positive returns from, a number of the younger guys. So, I mean, it feels to me like they are checking all the boxes of making sure that they have the proper depth, not only for this season, but beyond. And so I'm fine with it. Again, I'm not expecting him to come in and make a difference on day one or anything like that. And he may truly just end up being a break glass in case of emergency type of guy. But what if he's not? What if he surprises us? You're the one that I always think of when, and granted, completely different type of player and situation here. But, you always mention no one expected really much of anything from Hero Kanu. And look what he's, turned into. So you literally never know who that guy may be. I'm not even sitting here trying to say that, this young man is going to end up being that level of talent. But again, I think, they're doing the right thing by leaving no stone unturned. And if there's a guy out there that, you can take a chance on, why not?
I said guys like this at this point, Marcus, are like penny stocks. If you hit on them, great, you found something. If not, well, probably didn't come out of your NIL budget, and
Right.
it'll just cost you the scholarship. And he got a semester of school, so it's kind of a win-win for everybody from that standpoint. So we'll see what happens. But no, to answer the question, at this point, he'll be a depth piece, and get him on campus this summer, and then go from there. All right, we'll get back to it here in just a second. But right now, I want to thank our lead sponsor for the Wednesday night live stream. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. You stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general? If that's the case, call Andy. He'll take you through a process to help you find a business that's going to fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everybody, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And we want to thank Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Wednesday night live stream here on Texas Football. Marcus CB wants to know, so what's that meaning on your shirt?
Okay. Yeah. So, I've said it on a few episodes before. It's usually when I'm on with Rod because it makes a little more sense to him. We used to get a bunch of different shirts issued to us by our equipment manager. It was a guy named Chip Robertson, awesome guy. And and so I was redshirted, so I was on 5 squads. We got a bunch of gear, and over the years I've accumulated a lot of t-shirts. This one though was back from around my time, and it says "It's no attitude" on the front. On the back it says "We're that good." So I don't remember who made it, whose idea it was, but it applied, back then. And this, Jeff, like we're a pretty cocky bunch, but we put in the work to be able to back it up. So I need to grab something pretty quick to jump on the live stream tonight. And usually these shirts are like, workout or yard shirts, but I felt it was fitting these days because of all the winning that's going on around the 40.
Look at that. If the equipment room, if they have the yard sale around the spring game, you may see me out there. It's like, oh, Jeff's showing his Longhorn fan. I'm like, no, I need shirts for live streams and recorded videos. I've got the same rotation of about 5 or 6, and I need to mix it up a little bit. So.
I forget the name of the place too, but there's a spot on Burnett, and I think it's like year round, but it's only like a day or 2 a week.
Oh, the surplus store.
The surplus store.
Yeah.
And what they have a lot of times there is like just overstock or old stuff from UT that they're not using anymore. I know at one point they were auctioning off old lockers, but a lot of times they have t-shirts, or they'll have like workout pants, shorts, things from, any number of the different sports on campus. You can go and buy them like super cheap. So every now and then I run through there and just grab some stuff.
Yeah, it's weird hours. So it's like Thursday through Saturday, like, I don't know, 4 to 8 p.m. or something like that. It was weird hours. So I never get over there. But yeah, that's the surplus store. It's up the JJ Pickle Research Campus.
Yeah, that's exactly where it is.
That neck of the woods. So if you're ever over there in that part of Austin at those random hours, maybe you stop by the surplus store and get you something.
Yeah, I reserve the off season for all my random stuff, and then I wait, until we get into football season. It's back to 40 Acres Collection. So
there you go. Exactly. A shout out to 40 Acres Collection. I got a couple of those shirts in the closet right now, actually, which you do see from time to time when I'm wearing them on video. Marcus, this is interesting. Got an interesting question from Jacob. He says, could we see Ryan Wingo, take the next step this year? I guess, Jacob, I would ask as a follow-up, what do you think is the next step for Ryan Wingo? Is it just being consistency? Do you view it as him being an all-SEC performer? Do you think he can get to All-American status? So I guess what is the next step for Ryan Wingo? For me, Marcus, when I think about Ryan Wingo, I just want to see him, number one, obviously you want consistency. And he's not the first Texas wide receiver that will have had shown a lot of flashes as a freshman, had maybe not the sophomore year that people were expecting, but then came back and had a really good junior year. He would not be the first guy to do that, and I think there's a good chance he can do that. So the consistency, but for me, it's maybe expand the route tree a little more. That to me is Ryan Wingo taking the next step.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and that's probably something that he would want to do as well, right? To be able to continue to showcase his talents for the next level. But I agree with you. It comes down to like, what are your expectations of the next step? And sure, granted, his season wasn't what some would have wanted. It was still a really good season, like it wasn't like and granted there was a lot left out there, for him to have done even better with that. But I think, to your point, expanding that route tree, and I know I sound like a broken record, and by August people are gonna hate hearing it, but like just the mere fact that so much pressure is going to be taken off of his shoulders. I think you play better, when you have that. And so, with all the attention that will be devoted to Cam Coleman and any other, of the offensive weapons, there's a chance that some player, some teams out there just may kind of forget about Wingo, and I think that gives him a great opportunity to go out there and just perform, at a high level, be very consistent, and take advantage of a lot of those matchups.
Sandman says 800 yards, 12 touchdowns minimum. I mean, I don't like putting statistical stuff on guys. I mean, that's one of my, I'll be honest, it's one of my least favorite exercises is to try to predict, yards and touchdowns for anybody, or just try to predict statistical stuff before the year, even though I'll do it. I'll participate. Right. But I mean, it's like I said, it's expanding the route tree. And I do agree with you, Marcus. Like the fact that you've got Cam Coleman in now, Ryan Wingo doesn't have, we talked about a lot. He doesn't have to be the number one wide receiver now, and he can still go out and have a really good year. I mean, go back to Xavier Worthy, who had the same career arc I was just talking about. Great freshman year, took a step back as a sophomore. Turns out he played a decent chunk of the year with a broken hand, as we later found out. And then had a great junior year. Well, what changed during his junior year? Well, you got more consistency from the quarterback position because Quinn was a year older, but you also added A.D. Mitchell. So it wasn't just everybody can focus on X and you're force feed him the ball. The ball just kind of found him naturally. So I think that's one of those deals, Marcus. Ryan Wingo could see fewer targets. I would expect him to see fewer targets, but his production could be on par or above what it was this year just because those targets are going to come. I'm counting on Sark to scheme him open, and I'm counting on a little more consistency with him catching the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, everything that we've seen from this young man is that he has the right attitude, the right mindset. He's a team first guy. He's never had issues, out there blocking when he's been asked to. And I mean, he's dangerous as hell if he gets the ball in his hands. And so I think, again, I think it's one of those deals where the collective talent around him is going to help, make him, Cam Coleman, Emmett Mosley, literally anybody that goes out there on the field. I think they're all going to be, benefit from one another. And so I think, I don't need to put a number on it today. And to your point, we probably will before, preseason and when we're trying to find other things to kind of predict and figure out. But at the end of the year, I think he'll have, the numbers that will, show off his talent.
Well, let's go ahead and do that right now, Marcus, because David Keith Williams asked, the 2005 team had 6 players with 300 receiving yards and 5 players with 300 rushing yards. Considering the immense talent and depth on the 2026 team, do you think they can achieve totals like that? Here's my thing on the rushing yards. I hope not, because I think between Hollywood Smothers, Raleek Brown, and quite frankly, at this point, Derek Cooper, they're going to gobble up a lot of the touches. And honestly, Marcus, I hope Arch doesn't run the ball enough to be able to get to 300 yards rushing. I hope you save those for when you really, really need it. Because there are going to be games where you need to use his legs and his rushing ability as a +1 in the run game. Like the Ohio State game. Arch is going to run the ball against Ohio State. You're going to need to use his legs to win that game. But, if Arch has 0 carries against, Texas State in the opener, or go down the list of, hey, maybe you've got an SEC opponent on a down year, you can win that game without exploiting Arch and putting him at risk. That's great. As far as the 6 players with 300 receiving yards, I don't think so, Marcus, because Sark's circle of trust outside of the top 4 guys, just go look at what it's been at Texas. Yeah. If you're not one of those top 3 or 4 receivers, or maybe the tight end, like you're just not going to get that many targets. So I would say probably no, but that doesn't mean this offense can't be successful anyway.
Yeah, and I think you got to remember too, from our team then, like there wasn't a true like alpha receiver. I mean, if you pressed me to say who was the best receiving threat on that team, I would have said David Thomas, right? So I think the consolidation of some of those targets is going to change. And then I just don't think you'll probably see that many guys factored in running wise. I think that running back rotation is going to be relatively tight. And if anything, you may see, kind of two separate themselves from a rushing yard standpoint. But I don't know if I expect it to kind of mirror 05 in that manner. I think, the numbers will be probably higher per player and, fewer total players contributing to those totals.
Yeah, Jason mentions, especially if you make a run of the playoff, it's 13 games at that point versus 16 games now. So maybe you could get it, but I don't, with the schedule that they're playing, Marcus, because you look even non-con, like, we focus on Ohio State. Texas State was a bowl team last year, and I think Bill Connolly did his returning production article at ESPN. I think Texas State was like top 10 in the country in terms of returning offensive production. So, I mean, you're facing an opponent that can score. They can move the football. Sure. I don't know if they're going to be able to stop Texas. I wouldn't expect them to, but they can at least make it competitive for a little bit. And, hey, look, is Texas going to out-talent UTSA? Yes, but do I expect a Jeff Traylor coach team to come into a game and play really hard and tough and physical for 4 quarters? Absolutely. So there just aren't that many games, Marcus, where you're going to see the 40, 50-point blowouts where you can get a lot of different guys in the game.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, Jeff. And I mean, sure, this team has the capability, or it's within the realm of possibility for them to prove us wrong in that manner. And maybe the defense is so lights out that they continue to get them the ball back, and they just keep loading it up. I know CJ's gone out there and said the team's going to average 40 points a game. So I mean, sure, it's possible, but I think it's more likely along the lines of what you've shared, in that there are going to be some tighter contests that maybe aren't going to just allow for that many people to get that amount of reps.
I think what gets lost too, and you mentioned it, Marcus, like the 05 team, as talented as that team was, there wasn't like a legit like number one bona fide, like, okay, this guy is going to get X number of targets and you've got to funnel the ball his way X number of times. If anything, your number one receiver was a tight end. It was David Thomas.
Yeah. And probably, I guess, then you got Limas, B. Carter, Billy Pittman, right?
A little bit
and so, some Quan, even Ramont's, right? So it was kind of scattered in who, actually got the ball a bit. But like I said, if there was ever a go-to on that team, it was DT.
One of my favorite plays for that year, and this is why I love hosting with you, Marcus, is we can talk about stuff like this because you were there. You can recall it. I can recall it off the top of my head. One of my favorite plays that year was a passing touchdown, aside from what happened in the Rose Bowl. Like that, we're shelving, like anything VY gets shelved, it's in its own category.
Yeah.
The Texas A&M game, the pass in the flat to Ahmad Hall for a touchdown. You know why? That play always works. Nobody ever covers the fullback. The fullback in the flat is wide open every time. Nobody ever covers the fullback.
Yeah, fullback in the flat is always there, man. I think I scored, probably 4 or 5 touchdowns like my junior year, senior year in high school, off that play. It's one that was always available. And it was cool, to kind of reward A. Hall in that way because he was such a beast, just getting in there and blocking. So
I come to call that that's the Alex Delatorre special, is the fullback hitting the fullback on the goal. And shout out to Dale, who's actually a high school coach in the Metroplex now. So shout out to Alex Delatorre. All right, we'll get back to it here in just a second. Got a super chat on the other side, but right now I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors for today's episodes. That is Prize Picks. If you're watching games and you're not on Prize Picks yet, and I don't know what you're doing, this is hands down the best way to stay locked into every single play. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app, and it's super simple to use. You're not dealing with all the complicated stuff. You just pick more or less on player stats. That's it. Points, yards, strikeouts, whatever you're watching, you build up your lineup and you ride. And here's what I love. You can mix and match across sports. So let's say your favorite player, your favorite team is rolling. You can pair that with NBA, college hoops, Major League Baseball, whatever's on. It just makes it a way more fun to watch every game. And when I say every game, I mean every game. Prize Picks has literally just about everything you can think of. Let me give you an example of what I'm looking at right now. Today, we're locked on some NBA action. Actually, these games going on right now. I'm going more on Jason Tatum and 22.5 points. He's been hot lately. Then I'm also going more on Tyrese Maxey, 19.5 points. And more on Wemby, 3.5 dunks, because he hasn't had less than 4 dunks in the last 6 games. You can't go wrong picking Wemby. That's the fun of it. You build your own read on the game or players, and you just roll with it. And right now, if your new Prize Picks is hooking you up with this deal, download the app, use the code HMA, play just $5, and you're getting $50 in lineups instantly. That's right. Prize Picks is hooking you up when you download the app with $50 in lineups. After you play your first $5 lineup, just use the code HMA when you sign up. So yeah, go get signed up. Let's ride these picks together. And as always, play smart, play responsibly, and let's have some fun with it. That's Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app.
Man, Jeff, I know you were coming off that Prize Picks reading. I'm a big like Joe Budden podcast fan, and he actually just had the founders of Prize Picks on there.
Oh yeah,
these guys, man, they are sharp as attack, and they are young. Like the co-founder is like 31, and the founder's 41. Like these guys, I don't know how they came up with all this stuff, and had the kind of foresight that they did, but it's nails.
Is now so yeah, big shout out to Prize Picks. I've got a super chat, Marcus. It's funny, I was just all right, Cube. I promise I did not see your super chat before I made my Texas State comment a minute ago. But all right, Cube, thank you for the super chat. Says this year we have a quote unquote warm-up game prior to Ohio State. That's gotta help versus opening with Ohio State like last year. No, yeah, I would think, Marcus, as long as Sark can get, non-conference scheduling is a different, like we don't have enough time left in the show to discuss everything that goes into non-conference scheduling. But I would think if Sark has his druthers, you're probably not going on the road, big time Big Ten opponent to open the season again, if you can help it. Yes, it is going to help. So last year you're opening on the road against Ohio State, breaking in a new quarterback. You had some guys that had played, but it's a lot of guys stepping into different roles. It is good, Marcus, because at least you'll get the kinks worked out. You'll get to, run your stuff and kind of figure some things out before you play Ohio State. And like I said, for Will Muschamp's defense in his first game back at Texas, at least from that standpoint, the Texas State offense against the Texas defense, you're facing an opponent that can move the ball and can score. And G.J. Kinney's done a real good job at Texas State. And one of the most productive offenses in the country, and they got a lot coming back. So yeah, it is a quote unquote warm-up game. It's not Ohio State, but just being able to get out and run your stuff against somebody else before you face Ohio State will help.
Yeah, I mean, it always helps if you have, an opportunity to go out there, touch the grass, figure out, what's working, what's not against, a real opponent that isn't, in the caliber of an Ohio State. And so I think it'll certainly be beneficial, for them to get, a little bit of that kind of action beforehand. But to your point, Jeff, like it's not going to just be a complete cakewalk, right? Even if for a period of time, they're going to put up a fight, they're going to do everything they can to try to move the ball. And, I think it'll be interesting to see how it, shakes out. I think it's always interests me as well, when you look across the staff, like just different people that have ties to stuff. So, Ben Wells that's back home that's coming from Texas State. So, can give you a little insight there to hopefully, hit the ground running and have a nice little fine tune up before the Buckeyes come to town.
Absolutely. So look, I promise I'm not just going to be here talking up Texas State all off season, but like I said, from an offensive standpoint, the Bobcats can go. So thank you. All right, Cubed, for the super chat. Doug asks, good evening, gentlemen. God forbid Arch's injury lingers into the season. Do you think he would come back for the 27 season? Marcus, at this point, I'm not going to think that's an option because I don't think Arch's is going to linger into the season. It's not going to linger in through the end of spring practice. So no. I'm sorry, Marcus, but if Sark has shown anything, he's especially with that guy at that position, you're going to go above and beyond to be as cautious as you can be. And nothing wrong with KJ Lacey and MJ Morris and Diabell getting snaps while Arch is working his way back.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk about this as well, Jeff, but it's like, Sark usually doesn't let on too much in the way of injury unless it's something positive. And the fact that he's been talking about Arch kind of having, ramping things up a little bit more, gives me, a pretty high level of confidence that it's not going to linger. So that's not something I even want to kind of put out there and even really consider. So I don't know. I don't see it being a thing, and I think if all goes correctly, 2026 will be the last we see of Arch here on the 4th.
We would all, and I'm throwing myself into this, we would all love Arch to come back for 2027. But my mindset is I'm going to enjoy 2026 because for all intents and purposes, he's going to be a redshirt junior on the roster, but this is it for Arch. So I'm just going to enjoy the ride. Yeah, Marcus, we got a lot of I'll let you talk about one of your former teammates here because we started talking about wide receivers and the 05 team got brought up. Billy Pittman's getting a lot of love in the chat, and I can't tell you what Billy Pittman's numbers were off the top of my head, but the thing that you remember about that season is it seemed like every big game that was played in the 2005 season, Billy Pittman was making a big catch. The Ohio State game, the Texas Tech game, his catch from VY against OU is iconic. So I can't tell you off the top of my head what he did, but Billy Pittman showed up in big games that year.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he led the team in yards. I don't remember what the yards were, but I think he led the team in yards that year. And he made explosive plays. That was something we talked about a lot. Something that Coach Brown and Coach Davis were really big on is kind of winning the explosive play battle. And Billy was a guy that was perfect for that. Kind of to your point, I think kind of one of those do-it-all guys in high school. Played some quarterback. Was he Cameron Yo? Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cameron Yo. So yeah, man, Billy was just he was a solid player, man. Like he took pride in his work, and I think it ended up showing that year and paid dividends.
Billy and Ramont are cousins, are they not? I think maybe.
I think so.
If anybody in their family
close-ish,
feel free to correct me, but I thought I remember hearing that at some point. It's an interesting question, Marcus. And hey, you can feel free to bash one or both of them because Chris asked, when is the last time Oklahoma played Texas A&M? I would root for Afghanistan or Russia or whoever needed to be rooted for while those two teams are playing. But you got to go back to
there you go. Look at Matt
Cotton Bowl. Yeah, the Cotton Bowl at the end of the 2012 season.
Wow.
By the way, that the Cotton Bowl wasn't a New Year's Six bowl at that point. So Aggies don't count that as like you made a New Year's Six / BCS bowl. It was on the outside looking in at that point.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. So it hasn't been since A&M's first year out of the Big 12 that they had played. It's just wild, Marcus. Like that game is coming back. And by the way, like if you ever want, like it's hard because it's a dominant OU win. If you ever want to just like see maybe like the epitome of Aggie misery, go on to YouTube, search the 2003 Texas A&M Oklahoma game in Norman, where it's 77-0. I think at the end of the third quarter, that game could have been 100-0 if Bob Stoops wanted it to be. Like A&M was doing nothing right that day. Oklahoma was doing everything right that day. But this game is coming back, Marcus, now that OU's in the SEC, and it's really weird the way the schedule's worked out. Texas has played Georgia more often than Texas A&M has since the Aggies went to the SEC. Like it's just one of those weird scheduling quirks the way the SEC's worked out.
Are they playing this year, or is it like in a future year just because of the way the kind of schedule is all set up?
Talking the Aggies in Georgia or the Aggies in OU?
Aggies in OU.
If my fine internet service provider will cooperate with me, I can tell you here in just a second, unless Matthew's got it from. Good Lord, what's taking this thing so long? I believe they are.
Okay. Yeah, they do play this year.
November. Actually, A&M. Wow, A&M ends the year. Tennessee at home, at Oklahoma, then Texas at home. That's an old.
Supposed to be better. They're supposed to be better this year, Jeff.
Supposed to be. That's the old school Big 12 South schedule, though, Marcus.
That's crazy. Road trip to OU and then us 6 days later. Good luck to them.
At Bama. So there's the A&M schedule. Marcus, I just want to talk about the Aggies real quick because I think this was in our group text, our OTF group text.
Yeah.
We'll talk this week about Marcel Reed. Are you a believer in Marcel Reed or not yet?
No.
Or maybe not at all?
Not at all. And I don't say that to be like disrespectful to the young man. Like I think he certainly has talent. He seems to go about the game the right way. He presents himself really well. I've heard nothing but great things about him. But I can't really fathom how he takes a leap that ends up being impactful. I think as we were talking about that back half of the season last year, for as great as A&M was looking on paper, I was always very dismissive of it, and it was because of Marcel Reed. Like I didn't trust him against a legit defense. And now when you look at the fact that Colin Klein went and took the job at Kansas State, so he went back home, and you have a first-time play caller in Holman Wiggins. I'd be hard pressed to believe that their offensive line can be even as good as it was last year. So I think they're going to take a step back. And granted, both of their receivers are good, but they had really good receivers last year. And so when you factor all those things in, I just don't see how he ends up being kind of the tide that lifts their boat, if you will. Yeah. He just doesn't strike me as the player that can truly elevate, and he certainly hasn't proven that he's been able to do it against us. So when we were looking at that schedule there, I mean, there's some tough games and outings for him that he's going to have to kind of endure, and I don't know if he has enough around him to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm not a big fan in terms of what I think his ceiling is necessarily. But that's no slight to him as a person. I just he's not the guy I would want captain in my ship.
I think what started, in our group text there was a tweet from somebody doing NFL draft coverage, and
I retweeted that.
Watched the tape and said, "Man, Marcel Reed is not very good." And I looked on anytime you click on a thread on the Twitter machine, you're rolling the dice with your sanity.
Mm-hmm.
But I did, and an A&M fan responded, "Well, watch the tape of the South Carolina game." And he's like, "That's the game I'm watching." Like,
yeah.
You told me where he's really good. Like, no, because in the first half he was not good at all. So there it is.
That was it. And then to your point, I went a little further down in some of those comments, and there was an A&M fan who was like, "As an Aggie, I agree." So
but you know what? What's interesting too on the flip side, to bring it back to Texas, because this is a time where a lot of guys that cover the draft, they're NFL writers and they're not watching a ton of college football. So the draft process is when they're getting caught up. And I think there was a national perception that Arch was just awful early in the season. He didn't have a great year. And as people started watching the tape, they're coming away like, man, Arch took a beating against Florida, but he hung in there and like made some really good throws. I'm like, you're watching OTF, like we were saying the same thing. Like when everybody wanted to bench Arch in favor of Matthew Caldwell, like we were saying, like, no, like he hung in there and was tough against Florida. Like, yeah, there were games, Marcus, where you couldn't run from it. Like against San Jose State, Arch started good, didn't end well. The UTEP game was by far the worst game he played all year. Sam Houston was what it was. There were rough times, rough spots for him in the Florida game, but it's almost like the opinions of the two quarterbacks. We talk about Marcel Reed and Arch. It's pretty favorable for Arch now that everybody's watching the tape, and the more tape people watch on Marcel Reed, and maybe it's through an NFL lens, I don't know, but it doesn't seem to be very favorable at this point.
Well, and then it also doesn't help that, when you look at their trajectories, throughout the season, Arch, to your point, Jeff, started out, pretty rough, but I mean, it was, a steady ascent from there. And by the season's end, I mean, there was maybe, one quarterback you could argue or two, that were playing better ball than Arch at the end of the year. And, in Reed's final two games, they were some of his worst of all season. So I think that, kind of factors into it when, anybody gets to evaluating either. You always want to point at the in-state rival, and one finished the season much better than the other.
I think, I say this as unbiased as I could possibly look at it, looking at through as an objective lens as possible. If you look at the three quarterbacks, Arch, Marcel Reed, John Mateer, there's no question which one I would take of those three quarterbacks. And it ain't Mateer and it ain't Marcel Reed.
Yeah. And again, if you can actually get people to be objective, I'd have a hard time, and what they'll do is they would likely point to some cumulative stats, for Reed, right? and try to do the side by side. But again, if you just look at, all right, where were things trending, as the season, finished up, anybody that were to tell you something different would be lying.
Why has Gerard Johnson got to catch strays?
I'm looking here in the chat, like y'all are lighting some of these guys up, man. Like they just out there minding their business somewhere.
I think Reggie McNeil caught a stray at some point. Like what is it, Bucky?
I saw Gerard Hurd caught one too. Like everybody's
there. Look,
anybody can get it right now.
I don't have very many rules on this show when I'm hosting, right? So that will not stand. CB, the Gerard Hurd slander will not stand while I'm hosting or a part of a live stream. It just won't. I don't have very many rules. No Will Muschamp slander, which depending on how the defense performs this year, it's unvalid. So I guess I'll make an exception for that, but I'm expecting the Texas defense to play well. But no Gerard Hurd slander. Marcus, that's all I ask. Don't slander. Don't let my man Juice catch some strays. I love me some Gerard Hurd.
Yeah, me too, man. Gerard.
Hey, if you want Longhorn fans, if you want to win a bar bet, just remember the school record holder for single game total offense. It's not VY.
Vince Young.
It's not Colt. It's not Bobby Lane. It's Gerard Hurd against Cal. So just file that away. It's a nice little fun fact for you on a Wednesday night. All right, let's thank another one of our sponsors. Give a shout out to Rogue Shop, rogueshop.com. Rogue Shop is bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Rogue Shop ships nationwide. Make sure you use the promo code ONTEXAS for a special discount. Rogue Shop has it all from oils and creams to flour and gummies. Again, that's rogueshop.com. Use the code ONTEXAS for a special discount. I want to thank Rogue Shop for being a sponsor here on the Wednesday night live stream at On Texas Football. Now we got Now we can talk about Tyrone Swoops and chat. We got to get back on track. We're veering into the median. We got to get 2-10 and get this thing back in its proper lane.
Let's bring it back.
Deepsapalooza, Marcus has a question. If you were in charge, who would you start in the defensive backfield? I don't know, Marcus, that this is all that complicated. Quite honestly,
it's not that one. It's not that difficult for me. There's one spot that's kind of up in the air, but the rest I think are pretty.
Cade Phillips and Bo Masco at corner, Grayson Littleton at the nickel, Jelani McDonald and Derek Williams at safety. I don't know if you got anybody else different, Marcus, but that's pretty open and shut for me.
Yeah, I mean the one that you still just want to see how well Derek Williams is able to perform even further removed from his injury. But I mean, you would expect that pretty much kind of be the lineup. The only other person that intrigues me, well, I won't say only other person that intrigues me, but someone that could maybe like surprise in a way would maybe be Kobe Black. Just from kind of the skill set, and then even like you see them putting out the clips of on social media, and like you see Warren Roberson out there making some plays, and you see different guys. You hear a lot of smoke, pun intended, about Smoke Matthews, and so I don't know if those are the guys that you trot out to start, but I could see a world where they make a case for some playing time. In some of those, 3 high sets, or in more predictable long passing downs, you got 6 DBs on the field, and some other kind of configuration of your D line and linebackers, and they work their way in pretty regularly. But the 5 you listed, I think, are probably the surest bets you could have today.
Derek Williams, I want to get your take on this, Marcus, because CJ and I have talked about it on the channel. I think people forget because he was. It's almost out of sight, out of mind last year. Like we just didn't see a ton of Derek Williams last year. But you go back to 2023, he and Manny Muhammad kind of forced their way onto the field as true freshmen. And then in 2024, like he started the Michigan game over Andrew Makuba and was one of your starters at safety. Then he had a hamstring issue, and then when he came back from the hamstring, he had the knee injury against Oklahoma. But like he was a big time playmaker as a freshman and early in his sophomore year before the injury. I think that kind of gets lost when we look at where Derek Williams stands in this whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. And so, that's why I say my hope is that he's ramping to be as close to what he was pre-injury, because sometimes those things just take, time coming back from. But, again, to your point, like it's never really failed. There's always been a guy or two on every team on both sides of the ball that, I was involved in, and most of the really good ones that kind of forced the issue that said, hey, we got to find a way, to make sure that this, guy is on the field. The challenge with that is always, okay, getting this person on the field then means you have to bring who off. And so that just is kind of the rub. But, I think Muschamp is being paid well enough to be able to figure that out and figure out in a way that it's most beneficial for the team.
Rod and I were talking on football theory, and it just made me think of one of those. And Mac has since told the story. Derek Johnson was a freshman. It's like, we got to get Derek Johnson on the field. And Bull Reese was like, well, who are we taking off? Like, I don't know. Mac's like, find a way to put him on the field. But we only start 3 linebackers. And Mac's like, we'll start 4 linebackers. Like, I don't care what you got to do. Just put him on the field. So to your point, Marcus, like, yeah, when you got a great one, they're going to force the issue. So, but, you mentioned Kobe Black. That's where you're at with Kobe Black is where I am with Warren Roberson. Like,
okay.
And I don't say that because I go back to the bowl game, and I love the physicality, kind of the intent he played with in the bowl game. Because at that point, you got to wonder, a guy's thinking, man, I'm out of here. I'm headed to the portal.
Right.
Whatever the case is, after the bowl game, I just like what I saw from Warren Roberson. I don't know if that's going to translate into him getting a lot of snaps this year, but I've said it before. I'll say it again, Marcus. If you're planning on playing a 15, 16 game season, you're going to need pretty much every one of your scholarship guys to give you something at some point.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on in that. That bowl game could have gone a couple different ways, right? For any number of guys, as well as the team as a whole. But the fact that, I think a number of them had the awareness of, hey, I got a new DC that, is putting some eyes on this, on this game and ultimately going to be looking at my film. I thought it was really impressive that, he stepped up and performed the way that he did in that game. And those type of things, if you can carry that over into the spring, they'll earn you reps. Now, where and the quantity of those reps remain to be determined. But, again, to your point, Jeff, we looked up in that Vanderbilt game and you were down 4 DBs before you knew it.
Man.
So, you certainly don't wish that, on the team, but it's a long season. You got 9 SEC games now instead of 8. And if, you're playing for all the marbles, you're going deep into January this year, trying to get to Vegas. So, I think, these guys continuing to, ascend and prove that they can be counted on, will be necessary because at some point, your number is going to be called and you want to be able to respond.
That's why I was excited talking about the bowl game. That's why I was excited about Khalil Lockett because you got into that situation in the bowl game at wide receiver, which you're talking about with the secondary against Vanderbilt. Like Emmett Mosley went out, Ryan Wingo went out. Like Jamie French, I think might have been in the portal at that point. Like you basically got down to, hey, you got. I think Dalen McCutcheon might have gotten banged up during the game. You got to the point where like, hey, Khalil Lockett's got to play because you literally have nobody else. Like you got to play it. You got to throw on the ball, and he's got to step up. And credit to him, man, he stepped up and made a play. I felt so bad, Marcus, for his injury and him having to have surgery and miss the spring because that first week we were out there. I'm like, this is a guy that's practicing with the level of like a sense of urgency. Like he knows his time is probably now. Right. And since he's been out, and while Emmett Mosley's working his way back, now we're starting to hear some buzz about Sterling Burkhalter taking advantage of the snaps he's getting. So it's just it's unfortunate because I think this could have been a really nice spring for Khalil Lockett.
Yeah, I agree. I was excited to see, about his development and, he still has the opportunity to get back in time. I think, from all indications, Sark, expects him to be ready in time. It's just, he's missing, valuable reps that would have helped, him to stay on the path that he was on. But, right now you got to focus on his health and get back out there as soon as he's, able to give it a full go.
Yep. All right. One more time. Let's thank our lead sponsor for the Wednesday night live stream. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Do you want control over your own destiny? If you do, maybe franchise ownership is right for you. If you think that's the case, then call Andy Ludicky. Andy's an expert at placing people in the right franchise that's going to fit your strengths and your finances. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And we want to thank Andy Ludicky for sponsoring the Wednesday night live stream here on Texas Football. Marcus, we got a Miami fan at Go Canes in the chat that would love to see Texas beat up on OSU. You think that's what, like, Miami did beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, Marcus, but you think that's that 2002 national championship game at the end of the 02 season that, like, that's one Miami fans will never get over, the phantom pass interference call. Yes, Buckeye fans, should not have been called pass interference, but
yep. Yeah, it's it's one of those that, like, they wish they would be able to get back, and some of them you just hold on to that for eternity pretty much. So I'm here with them. I would love to see us beat up on them in Austin come September as well.
I can't talk too positively about Miami. I don't need producer Matt to cut my microphone.
And there he is.
Yeah. Yes, Matthew, that is personal growth, even though he admits he is.
Well done, sir. Well done.
And button. Yeah, Marcus, anything else that either you heard from Sark yesterday or any tidbits you picked up, anything you've heard from spring ball that's kind of got your antenna up that's top of mind for you?
It's probably not all that different than what y'all have spoken to and what he spoke to as well, but kind of this theme of competitive spirit, and that it kind of coming from all parts of the team, both young and experienced. I think that's when you have your best teams, when guys are out there, raring to compete. I know our best teams, it wasn't maybe always the smartest thing, but our best teams were the ones where we would scrap from time to time, right? But by the time you were, ready to walk off the field, I heard him kind of make this reference to, when Devonta Smith and Jerry Jeudy were going at Pat Surtain and Xavier McKinney and those guys, and how, every practice was a war, but then you left the field together. And that's how it was for us, back in the day. And I think that's how it is for any team that's working to be, and ultimately, is able to say they were a great team, is the competition is at a really, really high level. And so by all accounts, that's kind of the drumbeat that I continue to hear. And, from different people I trust, hearing what, you guys have been able to, catch in some of the windows that have been available. And, I think that's really important this time of year, is that you're able to compete at that high level, not only because, you kind of have that chippiness to you, but that, you and your teammates understand, what's ahead. And you have to, really be able to play at that kind of a level every day. I mean, it sounds cliche at times, but, again, your best teams are often the ones where, like, you're facing more talent in your practices than you're likely to face, in the majority of your games. And granted, there's going to be, some studs on different teams here and there. But, when you have the type of depth that they're building and the type of depth that, a lot of the great teams have, it's not just a body that's depth. It's elite depth. It's depth that if it was somewhere else would likely be starting and a very high-end player. And that's why often you got to figure out, all right, how do we get, some of these guys involved? It's a little harder, offensively, of course, because there's only one ball, but there's ways to do it. And so I think that's what it is for me. It's just the fact that it sounds like Sark likes this team. And that's not to say he didn't like others. It's just that it seems like, he's kind of one of those, like, proud papas that's, like, sitting back and like, okay, like, this thing is coming together, and now we got to build to, where we want to go. But it looks the way that he wants it to look.
It just, in a lot of ways, Marcus, this just felt like the perfect time for Sark to be able to reset everything in the program, because it just, I've called it a hangover. I don't know if that's what you want to call it. It just seemed like there was just this malaise last spring coming off the Cotton Bowl loss to Ohio State. I know they had a lot going on, but it seemed like that just kind of lingered for a while. And I think with not making the playoff this year, on top of the fact that, you added 40 new guys to the roster, turned over half the roster. Like, if you're a coach and you're wondering, man, is my message getting stale? It's not stale at all. It's brand new to half your roster. So, yeah, you can go ahead and reestablish kind of the parameters and the pillars that you use to get this program where it's at. And guys are hearing it for the first time. And, guys are stepping up. Sark's talking about Colin Simmons being a leader, and he's talking about guys stepping up in different leadership roles. So you can call it culture, call it whatever you want. I just feel like the reset for Sark, kind of getting back to basics, it couldn't have come at a better time. It almost, I don't say it needed to happen, Marcus, but it's not a bad thing that you turned over half your roster going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you hit a point. I don't want to call it, like, truly a plateau, but it's just like, okay, we've gotten as far as maybe we're going to get with kind of this style and group of players. And, we've gotten close to the mountaintop a couple times. Then you had the more disappointing outcome this past season where you don't make the playoff. There's no room for that. There's no room for error, right? It's kind of like Coach Vic is always saying when he's talking about the ladies, he's chasing greatness. And I think that's what all the coaches on campus are doing. And Sark is no different. They're not out there, trying to play for second. And everybody, at this time of year has the optimism and, is working towards similar goals. But there's only, probably a handful of teams that really have the talent that, on the onset, on paper, have the ability to do it.
Man, I love me some Vic Schaefer. And back in my terrestrial radio days, when I was co-hosting with Craig Way, by the way, #4Craig, as always, on this show, we're interviewing Vic Schaefer, and he was talking about just, the grind of a season, as you said, like all the striving for greatness, all that stuff. And he finally just kind of stops himself mid-sentence. He goes, I'm telling y'all, it's a miserable way to live.
Yeah, it really is.
And you see that, but yeah, when you get, I think for him and for Sark and even for Schloss, Mike White's got to the mountaintop last year, but you look at the other coaches on campus, they've all at various points in their careers. Sark won a national title as assistant, but as a head coach, they've all gotten close enough to where, okay, we can peek over the top, we can see it, but you're not there yet. So it is, and like the women's basketball team, Marcus, I was thinking about this, watching them just destroy Michigan, which is one of the more just impressively dominant performances you've ever seen a Texas team have in a big game in any sport. Like it was really impressive start to finish. But I'm watching the ladies celebrate on the court, and I'm like, think about all the work it took just to get to this point, to get right back to where you were last year.
Yep.
And now you're back, but everything that had to go into it. And now it's like, okay, now you're back. Now can you get over the hump? Can you get past the semifinal game and get into a title game? So I don't know. I don't really know where I was going with that, Marcus, but it's just that when you're striving for greatness, as Coach Schaefer said, it can be a miserable existence sometimes, but that's why it helps to freshen things up a little bit.
Absolutely, man. And certainly shout out, to Coach Schaefer and the ladies, playing on Friday. So really looking forward to that and wishing them the best and hoping we get to see them, play on Sunday.
You're not going to the Final Four, are you, Marcus?
I'm not, man. I got my oldest niece, this club volleyball situation. They like I heard Stevie talking about, look, Jeff, they've already been this year to Kansas City, I think Salt Lake City, maybe. And this weekend they're in Atlanta. So I'm gonna go for the Easter weekend, and I'll be in the gym watching some volleyball. And what's interesting about it too is a lot of times, I know as we're wrapping here, as I've been going to more and more of these volleyball tournaments, I see former athletes, like a couple years back, I'm at a tournament in Houston, for her, and Terrell Brown walks up, and that's because his daughter Takayla, was on a club team here, based out of Austin, and she's had a great year as a freshman at LSU, and you see all these different like athletes that their kids are in different sports. I think Big Sean's daughter plays. Sean Rogers' daughter plays some volleyball. Obviously like Marcus Spears. With his daughter, at Texas, and even Chris Ogden. I think he has a daughter that plays some volleyball because he was at one of those volleyball tournaments one time as well. So
Jermaine O'Neal.
O'Neal. Matter of fact, my niece, she lives in the Dallas area, and prior to the club team she's on now, she played for the club team that Jermaine O'Neal runs. So,
by the way, Bobby and Jenny Burton, veteran parents of the club volleyball circuit back in the day. Yeah. Bobby can tell you about different places and setups where I know he's like, man, I've been to Indianapolis too many times to count, talking about how they got the intricate, hotels with the walkways and everything. So yeah, Bobby is a veteran of the club volleyball circuit.
Yes, sir.
Marcus, thanks for hanging out as always, and for
Absolutely.
the knowledge and expertise and indulging me on my trips down nostalgia lane. So I appreciate it very much. Big thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, the MVP at On Texas Football. Matthew certainly is. So big thanks to Matthew for everything you do. Thanks to everybody in the chat for keeping it lively tonight. And thank you as always for the super chats. Big shout outs again to Andy Ludicky of My Perfect Franchise, Prize Picks, and Rogue Shop. Just want to remind everybody, if you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, you can get over to the site right now, sign up using the promo code OTFOG when you get there, and that'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for just $39.95. Make sure you take advantage of our spring sale right now. Again, the promo code is OTFOG when you sign up. Make sure you hit that like button and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whenever we go live or drop a video, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage or breaking news. Also, just a reminder, if you got any questions, comments, concerns, whatever you got, you can address it to the guys at Coffee and Football bright and early, first thing tomorrow morning. Don't forget Texas. We got Texas spring practice. Longhorns are back on the field in the morning. Got a player availability scheduled for tomorrow. Don't know who we're getting, but stay locked into the channel because we'll have news on that whenever it happens. Baseball team starting a series against South Carolina tomorrow. And as we talked about, the women's basketball team taking on UCLA in the Final Four on Friday. So we'll be talking about all that and much more here on the channel. So for Marcus, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, hook 'em.
Hook 'em.